I want to tell you the story of a man who had leprosy in the Bible. Leprosy was a horrible disease in the time of Jesus. It caused you to have holes in your skin, and sometimes it would eat away at your fingertips and at your toes. These days, people with leprosy can be healed easily. There's all sorts of medicine that the doctors have that can make you better. But in those days, there was no cure for leprosy, and you had to stay about the width of your lounge away from anybody else if you had leprosy, and you had to cry out, "Unclean, unclean," so that no one would come near you. Well, there was a man who had leprosy, and he came in touch with Jesus. He saw Jesus and his disciples, and he went up to Jesus. He didn't go too near, and he called out to him and said, "Jesus, if you're willing, you can make me clean." Now Jesus heard the man's voice, and he looked at him, and he saw how disfigured this man was. He saw the sores on his hands and his feet, and he was filled with compassion. And he said to the man, "I am willing." And Jesus did something that was really very unusual. Instead of keeping his distance as most people would, he went up to the man and he laid his hands on him and he prayed for him and said, "I am willing. Be clean." And immediately the man was healed of his leprosy. All the sores on his hands suddenly disappeared and he was made better. What a wonderful thing that was. And then Jesus said to the man, he said, "Look, I don't want you to go and tell people about this, but go to your priest and tell him what the Lord has done for you, and offer the sacrifices that the Bible tells you that you need to make as a thanksgiving for what has happened to you." But the man, instead of doing that, he went and told everybody. And because of this, Jesus found himself having to stay in the lonely places, whereas what he really wanted to do was to go in the towns and teach people. But he found that even in the lonely places, people came from everywhere so that he could pray for them. Now, this story of the man who had leprosy is really a picture that God paints about us, not in terms of marks on our skin, but marks in our heart. And what this story tells us, that those bad things that can make our hearts dirty, that as we look to Jesus and put our trust in him, he can clean us of them in a moment. And that's what Jesus can do for you. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you.